Hello and welcome to the program. We are currently at the Kyiv Media Week 2018, the largest media forum in Ukraine and a key media event this year here where major players, media actors in Ukraine meet other major players from around the world. Now we are joined today by the format doctor, a BAFTA award-winning content specialist, Justin Scroggie, who's the founder of The Format People, a worldwide consultancy practice aimed at creating better content. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
So you are, among other things, here in this forum to deliver a keynote. Now, can you tell us about the main theme that you're going to approach here?
Okay, so the keynote's called Revealing the DNA of International Formats. And the premise of it is that we can all create ideas and we can all create formats, but a format is something that travels. And as well as traveling, it has to work in its local country first. So you need to build in elements into the original format that will also allow the show to travel. So the point of the talk is really to explore what those elements are.
So to adapt this format to certain and to different cultures, you mean?
Yes, I mean every format has to adapt to a future territory. Yeah, exactly. But what I try to do is to help people to build into the original idea, the original development of the show, if you like, the seeds of the potential to travel.
Ukraine is slowly developing and slowly becoming a major player in Eastern Europe. How do you explain this attraction? How do you explain that Western medias are getting interested into it?
I think a lot of it is because, television is hungry, where we eat ideas, and ideas are everywhere. And everyone is looking for the next place which is going to be a hotbed of ideas. And what we're also looking for is people who think slightly differently. The danger of television, particularly international television always, is that we all end up creating similar looking shows, and then a new player comes on the scene, like Holland at one point and Israel at another point, where suddenly there's this whole bunch of fresh ideas that are not like ones we've seen before. And I think the attraction of Ukraine at the moment is that everyone is getting excited about new ways of making TV, new stories to tell, new ways to tell stories.
So as the format doctor, I guess you studied your file before, what would you say is the main challenges that Ukraine is facing to properly develop in that matter?
I think one of the main challenges is about visual identity. Something that I've noticed a lot in Central and Eastern Europe is that television is very word-based. People talk a lot, and which is great. People express a lot of opinions and so on. The challenge then is that formats that travel are often more about the pictures than the words. So I think it's almost keeping that originality that I was talking about, but thinking about it in more visual terms, perhaps.
Now, in more visual terms, do you see some sort of new Ukrainian aesthetic getting, shaking off its shackles of the post-Soviet kind of style, and a new wave of Ukrainian aesthetic in medias?
Well, I think the personality of a country needs to come through. I mean, whenever I'm working in countries that are coming into this industry, something that I constantly say to them is you have to play to your strengths. On the one hand, because you're coming into an industry and whatever, people want to fit in, which is understandable, but at the same time, you want to bring something of that aesthetic to the table because that's one of the reasons for coming to you. It's a difficult balance, but you've got to somehow find that sort of universality and at the same time say, I want to go and buy this in Ukraine because, and as you say, as a country that is emerging politically independent, and as a country that is, certainly, walking around here yesterday, I was very struck by so many symbols of saying, we are free, we have independent thought, and we don't mind being the person that stands out. Now, how does that translate into different genres of television? How does that translate into dating? How does that translate into reality? How does that translate into game show? Because that's what the rest of us are looking for is, what are you doing with that in this particular art form?
Because Ukraine is currently going through a certain peculiar context, with a war context and defining its own identity. One of the danger might be that the creation of this identity is passing through patriotic or only historical, or reviewing historical events that have been shattered by Russia. How to avoid this trap? How to still create some creative contents without getting into the trap?
Yeah, well, I think it's about taking a step back from that. I mean, a lot of the art of format development is to have those sort of thoughts and then just take one big step back from it and try and look at it in a slightly broader context. I take an example of South Africa, where we work a lot, and in South Africa there's a very strong ethic about, if you want to succeed at something, you have to do yourself. It's not about other people coming in to help you, or millionaires giving you money or whatever. And the real heroes are about standing on our own 2 feet, and that's a very powerful thing. But you could make documentaries about that, and people have, or you could say, well, okay, so how does that work in a business reality format? How does that work in a dating format? How does that work in shows where normally you'd have 3 judges who judge everything and tell you what to do? Maybe those people need to be in a slightly different role, because if they're doing it all, then what am I doing? I'm not standing on my own 2 feet. You see what I mean? So I think it's about trying to see how those broad themes can play out in recognizable genres, but press a certain button amongst the local viewer who says, yes, this is speaking to me. This is on the same zeitgeist that I am, but it's also something that can transport.
So it would be a way of creating bridges between, as you said, the local identity, which could be adapted and travel.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, one of the perks of Ukraine is now the cheap cost of production and, of course, good locations. So many of Western production companies also come to Ukraine to shoot movies because of that. How to ensure that Ukraine is not only a place to shoot movie in a cheap cost, but also leave the room for a new, emerging, thriving generation of Ukrainian filmmakers and films in general?
Well, inevitably it comes back to ideas. It comes back to original ideas. The challenge really for the broadcasting industry is to have the courage to put new ideas on screen. And the challenge to creatives is to make those new ideas palatable, to make those ideas, work for the broadcaster. And that's what's going to attract the attention of the West. In the end, it's going to be, in order for the West and for other countries to say Ukraine is a place of ideas as opposed to as a place of production, then they need to see those ideas on screen. It's simple in a way, is if you have the self-belief in these original ideas, to broadcast them, to watch them, to vote for them, whatever it is, to give them awards, that is going to give material that can then be taken out into the international market. I'm going to talk this afternoon, and I talk a lot about passion and about self-belief. One of the things that distinguishes pretty much every big format that's out there, and by big I don't mean production big, but big in terms of its international impact, is the level of belief that people had in their ideas in the first place. And very often they were rowing against the tide when they came out.
Now, if tomorrow, let's say, so I'm in Ukraine, I'm Westerner or not, I was to create a new format, I was to launch a new media, and what kind of advice would you give me?
When you say new media, what do you mean by that?
In any case, if I want to launch myself in the markets, what kind of advice would you give it to me?
Wow. Well, I think I would start with what I just said, which is that I would say, how much do you believe in this idea? Have you created this idea because you think I'll like it? or have you created this idea because you like it, because it's the best idea you've ever had?
Yes.
You know, some of the best advice I ever got at the beginning of my career was, I remember pitching something to the BBC, and the controller then of BBC Entertainment said to me, "Is this the best idea you've ever had?" And I went,
They're like,
and he went, "Well, there you are."
Yes.
You know, that says it all. You know, I will always open the door to you, Justin, but come back to me with the best idea you've ever had. Because if you don't really believe in it, then I'm not going to believe it, and the viewer's not going to believe in it. So that would be the first thing I say. And the second thing I would say is take time, which is something that people don't want to hear. But the truth is that development takes time. The first idea that you have takes a long time to figure out how it actually works. And sometimes you have to keep putting it away in a drawer and getting it out again, and then putting it away again, and then maybe pitching it to some people and getting turned down and putting it away again. And in all of that time, a bit like a pebble in the stream, you know, it's smoothing out, it's getting clearer and cleaner and whatever. And unfortunately, it takes time. There's very few genuinely overnight hits.
Well, thank you for all this advice. It was a pleasure to have you today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
That was The Format Doctors, Justin Scroggie, who was also the founder of The Format People, a worldwide consultancy practice aimed at producing better content. Thank you for watching the program, and stay tuned for the rest.